Hello, my name is Pam. I'm a first-year law student here in Miami. I'm so excited because I know that it is that kind of season where everyone's getting their law school acceptances and kind of just like deciding on which law school they're going to. And if you've already decided, then just kind of mentally preparing yourself before law school, since this is going to be the last summer before your entire legal journey. And so enjoy it. But I'm also just going to kind of go into the thought process that I had when I was still kind of choosing where I wanted to go. And spoiler, I don't go to Harvard, I don't go to Georgetown, I don't go to a T14 school, and I'm still doing well for myself. I have an internship this summer that is paid. I passed my classes. I'm going into my 2L. I'm getting my JD. My Juris Doctor will be got, and I don't go to a super fancy school. So I wanted to make this video because I want to like communicate that it's still possible. And sometimes on social media you see all of these successful people that go to like Harvard and Georgetown, and that's amazing. Like all those UCLA creators are, I follow them. Like I'm so happy for them, especially when they're Hispanic and they're girls and I want to uplift them. But that's just not the reality for me. Success is going to look different for my journey, and that is totally fine. There's different things you're going to consider when you're applying to law school, and once you actually get your acceptances and your packages, it's going to be location, cost, rank, other stuff like practice area, employment rates, stuff like that. And for me, my most important thing was going to be cost outweighed everything when it came down to it. As I was applying to law school, the biggest thing for me was location. I told myself I wanted to live in a city and all this other stuff. So location, and rank. Like I didn't care where I was. Like I wanted to go to a good school that had a good program in a great city. That was my goal as I applied. Once I got my acceptances back and realized what the reality of these student loans were going to look like, my perspective shifted in just a year. Like when I tell you, I was so 100% sure that I was going to go to a school in a big city and I didn't care how much it cost. No, in a year a lot can change. So cast a wide net, apply to as many schools as you can, because you don't know how you're going to think in a year. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I did not want to pigeonhole myself into so few options. So at the end of the day, for me, cost was the biggest thing, because those law school, like the number of tuition and cost of attendance and like cost of living became so real once you were like 6 months out from deciding which school you were going to go to and deciding like, I need to move, like I need to actually get to this city. So I applied to I think 7 different schools. Let me check. I made a whole other video on like all the schools that I got accepted to and like my stats, like my GPA, my LSAT. If you're curious about that, I don't know if that's helpful for you, but if that's helpful, I'll link it up here or somewhere. Anyways, I'll just tell you how many schools I applied to. So I applied to 8 different schools: St. Thomas University in Florida, Florida International University, Stetson University College of Law. So those 3 schools are in Florida. University of Miami, Loyola in Chicago, Chicago Kent in Chicago, Emory in Georgia, and Florida State University in Florida. So those are the schools that I applied to, and just to kind of give you an idea of what like my thought process was going into it. And I will say that your perspective is going to change a lot once you actually get your decisions. So my advice is to apply to as many schools as you possibly can. If you can apply to 15 schools, apply to 15 schools if you can see yourself going there. Like I would never move to Alabama. I would never move to Missouri or Kansas. Like what am I gonna do in Kansas? No, that's not happening. I would not do that. Would I have moved to Emory? Okay, fine. Would I have gone to Chicago? I wanted to. So like apply to schools that you actually see yourself going to, because at the same time you don't want to waste the application money and you don't want to take another student's spot. Obviously there's still wait lists for that reason, but you know what I mean. So first is going to be location. So I really wanted to go to a city because I went to Tallahassee for my undergrad and it was horrible. Like I loved FSU, don't get me wrong, like I loved FSU. I had a great college experience. I'm so thankful for my experience, but Tallahassee was so boring, and I just couldn't imagine going through that again, because like it was just so dreary. It was dark, hilly. Like Tallahassee is a city, just like I hated it. So I didn't want to go through that again. Fun part about college was being in my sorority and, you know, like the student clubs and the organizations and making all these friends and having fun. And I knew that that wasn't going to be a thing in law school. Like I was going to have to really lock in. So location wise, I did apply to Tallahassee and like other smaller schools in areas that I wouldn't necessarily love to live in, but I applied considering the other like things that I was thinking about. But location also came into things because I knew I could afford the rent in Tallahassee. So I looked at that. I also applied to the University of Miami. Very, very expensive, obviously, to live in Miami. I wanted to cast a wide net. I think one of the main things about location that really changed my mind was how cold it got in Chicago, and like my seasonal depression was not good the year before law school. So I was unwell and I was like, yeah, if that happens to me, like I was getting panic attacks and like a lot of anxiety, and if that happens to me in like sunny South Florida, like I cannot imagine the winters in Chicago. Also, I hate the cold. I get sick very easily because I have an autoimmune disease, and so I get sick if someone like looks in my direction. So I don't want to deal with that while also trying to like maintain like good grades in law school. So for me, I'm so thankful that I realized the weather in Chicago just wasn't for me. Same thing for Emory, and then just like the dreariness and like the location of Tallahassee wasn't for me either. Also, look at rent prices in the school that you're looking to go to. So again, when I mentioned Tallahassee, like the rent over there is so cheap. I remember in college I was paying $500 for my rent and I only had one roommate. Like that's crazy. That is crazy. Like versus in Midtown Miami, rent is $3,000 for a 1-bedroom. Like that's insane. I think location is also really important too, because like I said, I went to Tallahassee, so I would consider that the South. I would never live in the South again. I like a lot of diversity. I am Hispanic. I like good food, and I just can't imagine living in a place where like diversity isn't celebrated and people don't look like me or have the same background as me. And I can't imagine being like in law school and going through so much your first year of law school while also having to like navigate like dealing with other people's like stereotypes and like their perceptions of you and your culture. So no, like if you're a person of color, I would definitely consider that. I'm sure you already know this, but if you're looking for like a very diverse city or at least a diverse law school, I would look into that, because I did not want to go to a law school that was like not in a diverse city. I did that for undergrad and I saw, and that's why I joined a Hispanic sorority, because I was going through culture shock. Another thing that I would add for location is if you know that you want to practice in Florida because your entire family's in Florida, maybe you're married and your partner's in Florida, it really doesn't make any sense to go to law school in North Carolina. Like it doesn't make sense unless obviously you're going to like a Harvard or a Georgetown that have like regional respect or national respect, because there's a lot of law firms down here in Miami, for example, where I have heard like they only hire clerks from that are students that go to UM or the University of Miami, or that went to the University of Florida or Florida State University, because alum has a lot of power here in Miami. So I would just consider that a little bit before you decide on moving, especially if you know that your end goal is going to be to stay in the state where you're currently at. This could also differ. I don't know what it's like in maybe like the Midwest, if like those states are more like close. Florida's so big, so like if you're leaving Florida, like you're just gonna be at a slight disadvantage. Again, I wouldn't say this is end all be all. If an out-of-state school is offering you 150% scholarship, go there, in my eyes. Like in my eyes, because it's just, for me, once again, cost was just the biggest thing. I'm not going to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt for the same degree that I would get at a school that is covering everything. So that was just my perspective. Okay, so I would say location and cost kind of go together. So the second thing that I heavily considered with my decision process is cost. So not only is it cost of living, it's a cost of tuition, and so I combined that with like my scholarship offers. So if any school did not offer me a scholarship, they were just immediately not on my list. So I got waitlisted at University of Miami, for example. So all of the schools I got accepted to, gave me scholarships, but I got waitlisted at University of Miami. So I wasn't even interested in pursuing that any further, because if they're not going to give me a scholarship, I'm not going to go into a lot of debt just to go to that school. Like that's not happening. So I didn't fill out I think there was like a form you were supposed to fill out or something like that if you were still interested in going to the school. I didn't do that, and I would just like heavily encourage you to consider how real law school loans are. The schools that for me I was ranking higher were every school that gave me a bigger scholarship. So if I looked at that, it was St. Thomas, Stetson, Chicago, and Loyola. Like those were the 4 schools that were on my radar, but I immediately got rid of Chicago and Loyola, or Chicago, Kent, and Loyola, because they were in Chicago, and I was going to be freezing my butt off in the winters, and I didn't want to deal with that. So I just kicked them off of my radar. Mind you, this comes a year later, so like I'm already in that mindset of like having to put down my seat deposit. I filled out my FAFSA, like having to really take into account what I'm going to be paying for school, and realizing that it's not worth it. Like it's not worth it. Like the cost to go to a different school and live in a big city like Chicago, just for me, it just wasn't there, because I already have like a home here that I wouldn't have to pay a huge rent price for. I pay a mortgage. So for me, that just made more sense in terms of cost and cost of living. So I narrowed it down to those 2 schools, Stetson and St. Thomas University, because I just did not want to deal with paying sticker. I wasn't going to do that. Of course, everyone talks about rank, and so that is the 3rd main topic. If this is important to you, if you're legacy Georgetown, I don't really know. Like if this is important to you, then it's important to you. For me, it wasn't. I don't go to a super high ranked school. I don't go to a top 50 school. I don't go to a school where everyone does big law. Like that's not my journey, and I am so okay with that. And that's why I started my channel, because I feel like everyone on social media like shows like the people that go to Harvard and like all these really nice schools, which is such an amazing feat and so incredible that they made it there, and that is still something that you should still be very, very proud of. But I'm also on a journey where success looks different, and I am okay with that. I'm happy with the choice that I made. I did not weigh rank as heavily. People say, and this is the advice that I saw before I got to law school, and I kind of want to reflect on it a little bit, is that people say like if you know you want to do big law 100%, then yes, go to a higher ranked school. But I'm gonna have to say that I disagree with that advice, because you don't know. You've never worked in big law. Like you have unless you've been to law school, you have no idea what it's like. Maybe if you were a paralegal or a legal assistant in big law, you would kind of have an understanding of the culture there and like what the work is like. But other than that, like I can't imagine how you would even begin to understand like what that is going to look like for you. If you're concerned with making the most amount of money and you want to go to a school that everyone does big law, then I understand why you would want to go to a higher ranked school. That makes sense. Like if that's your journey and you're okay with like working 80-hour weeks and just being on call 24/7, like that is okay. That's such a big sacrifice, but that is okay. And there's people, sorry my camera died, but there's people at my law school that is not highly ranked, but there's people in my law school that are still doing big law. So it's not end all be all. If you don't go to a very high ranked school, you can still do big law. It's okay. Yeah, that just for me, it wasn't high on my list. Rank was not high on my list. It could be high on your list, and that could be your goal, to do big law and get these, and you want to be a Supreme Court justice. I will say that just given the current administration, the loans that grad students use are in the works of being very limited. So I would just be careful with that and do your research, because with how things are going in Congress, I really hope it's not the case, but with how things are going, students, like law students, might not have access to those loans that we get from FAFSA to be able to afford those really high sticker prices at places like Georgetown, UCLA, even University of Miami. So I would look into that just in case, because those loans are also not just for tuition, but they're for living. So be careful as you make this decision, because obviously we don't know what the future holds, and you don't want to end up your second year trying to figure out how you're going to be paying for tuition the next year, you know? I think that's like one of the main things rank is important for, is like for big law, like very prestigious positions, like if you ever want to be clerking on the Supreme Court, things like that. If you see yourself doing it, like I think that's how you go about it. I don't really know much about it, obviously, since that's not my journey. But another thing I would look at that kind of ties into rank, but is the next thing, is employment. So employment was really big for me. Look at the 509A BA reports. I forgot what they're called, but I'm gonna link them down below because you should definitely look at them. I was stalking their page, which basically shows the employment rates of each university, of each law school. They have to actually publicize this, so you're able to access every single university's reports to kind of see what employment looks like for each law school that you go to. So there's two websites that I'm going to link down below because you guys should look at these. It just shows you the numbers of what reality looks like when these students graduate, and what these students are basically kind of like making, and what these students where these students are working. So whether they're unemployed, whether they're working at like boutique firms, medium-sized firms, if they're working in JD preferred jobs, meaning they're not actually like barred yet, but they're just working at other jobs where you don't need to be an attorney. So things like that I feel like are really important, and I really valued that in my search. But again, out of anything, cost was the most important. So I told myself, and this is a little bit different because I did have a few gap years before law school that helped me in my resume, but I told myself that cost was the most important, because if I can do it without a JD, you're damn sure I'm gonna do it with a JD. Like there's no way I'm gonna be less successful going to law school. Like that's just not happening, and according to how things are going, it's not in the works for me. So I will be just as successful, honestly more with a JD. But I knew that because I had some work experience and like very good jobs, I knew that for me, I'm not like as worried about my employment opportunities post-grad, just because I have a lot of experience. So I'm okay with that. But if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience, this should be important to you, because the reality is that after law school you need to get a job. So maybe this has to do with the career services center at your law school, or maybe this has to do with that law school's reputation in that geographic region. I don't know. So look into the employment reports so that you're making an informed decision, because at the end of this you need to have a job to pay off those loans. So if there's a practice area that you know you really want to work in or get some experience in, or maybe get a concentration in, I would consider that if it aligns with like one of your other values, like cost. So Chicago Kent, for example, they have a really good employment law program, and I was so interested in that, and I was really looking forward to doing something like that, but that just wasn't in the cards for me. And looking back on things, I wanted to do employment law, I think like 2 years ago, and then a year later I wanted to do healthcare law. So I'm still kind of at that point where I'm not really sure what kind of law I want to do. And sometimes you just find out that what you thought you liked isn't necessarily what you like, or is what you want to do. Even though you like it in some aspects, it might not be what you enjoy doing in the legal aspect. So for me, I think that might be the case with healthcare. I thought that I wanted to do kind of like healthcare compliance, because that's kind of what I'm doing now in my internship, but it's just like a little bit different than what I expected. Nova down here in South Florida has a really good healthcare law concentration. I didn't even know they had that. I wish I would have researched it more and looked into it more, because that would have been something that I considered, that I probably should have applied to Nova just because of that program. But I'm so happy, because I live in Miami, and that would have been such a crazy commute driving every day to Davie. Like I don't think I could have done that. So everything works out for a reason. But I would also look into the practice area in case there is something that you want to in case there is a practice area that you want to do, especially if you were already like a paralegal or a legal assistant and you kind of know that you want to litigate in this specific industry. Then maybe in that case I would kind of like think that it would be helpful to kind of focus your law school search based on a practice area. But again, I am just that girl that considered cost out of everything, because we really are in a time where you can just get law school paid for. Like you do not have to get into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. And the way the economy is today, that is just gonna set you up for so much an easier life. You know what I mean? Like big law is not guaranteed. is not guaranteed, you might find that it's soul sucking and maybe you don't deserve that. I don't know. Like, for me, cost was the #1 thing that I considered, so that's why I decided to stay in Miami. I thought about going to Chicago. I still haven't visited, and I am so happy with my decision. Like, no matter where you decide, law school is going to be the experience that you make it. Your first year is going to be so hard, but it is going to be so rewarding. And once it's over, you're going to be so thankful that you did it. I can't believe I'm going to go into my 2nd year. Like, that's crazy to think about. And so yes, I did decide to stay in Miami and go to St. Thomas, and I negotiated for a 90% scholarship. I made a whole other video on that, but yeah, I am just really thankful because that was the school that offered me the most money. And once I got my packages from all my other schools, I realized that this is the school that I want to go to, and I'm thankful because my decisions led me here. But yeah, I think those are the main things that you should consider before going to law school. It is a huge decision. You're going to be at that school for the next 3 years. If you have any questions about anything, please comment them down below, or you can shoot me a DM. I'll probably just put like my TikTok somewhere. You can DM me, and I would want this page, like I want this page to be like a resource. No one in my family did law school or went to law school, so I just relied on social media a lot for help. So I hope this was helpful for you, because I want that to be the resource that it was for me.